Before we start our tutorial for week number 10, I would like to summarize about what we have done so far for the past 9 weeks. Let me go to an outline, detailed outline for our weekly tutorial videos so far. You can see from week number 1 to week number 5, we actually cover all the procedural basics for programming in Java, namely elementary programming, conditionals, and also loops. And starting from week number 6 until week number 8, for the 3 weeks, we actually cover all the useful stuff for you to write programs with the object orientation. We'll talk about how you can define a class, declare attributes, and also define constructor accessor mutators that will actually manipulate these attributes. And also we talk about how you can use the dot notation, and also the phenomenon for reference aliasing. And also we talk about how you can manipulate either single valued reference type attributes like a trainer, or we can or how you can manipulate the multi-valued reference type attribute like facilities in the member class. So these are all the important stuff for you to not to forget, and that you should really carry on with developing your own OO programs beyond this course. All right, and then for last week, week number 9, we actually spoke about one very useful application for your object-oriented programming skills, which is to use it in the mobile programming context. And we spoke about developing apps in the Android Studio, and especially the model view controller paradigm, how you can define a shared object in the controller, and then between the button clicks from the GUI, you want to make sure you can invoke some methods in the controller, and the controller method will in turn actually call methods on the model objects, right? That's kind of the workflow that we did last week. You want to make sure you actually familiarize yourself with this. All right, and then for the remaining 3 weeks for the semester, I would like to cover 2 more topics to finish off our weekly tutorial video for Java. So the first topic will be about two-dimensional arrays. It's like a more advanced data structure that will generalize the one-dimensional arrays, which we spoke about previously. And I'm going to spend maybe week number 10, the current week, and also week number 11 to talk about two-dimensional arrays, and then do examples together with you as usual. And then for the final week, week number 12, I'm going to talk about how you can look up methods and also library classes from the Java API library. And that's something you really want to keep as well, because beyond this course, you may not have to build everything from scratch necessarily every time. In that case, you just want to find out if there's any library method that simply people have built already for you to use. And that's something I would like to talk about as well for the final week. All right, that's about the tentative plan to finish off the semester. I'll try to implement that as much as possible. And then let's now move back to our Eclipse. So we will no longer use the Android Studio like last week anymore. So just Eclipse for the rest of the semester. Let's now go to Eclipse, and I would like to do something a little bit different from as usual. Usually we simply stop programming right away, right? That's what we typically do. However, this time, since up to now you have built lots of foundation already in your programming toolbox, you know very well about procedural programming in Java. You also know very well about OOP in Java as well. So now I would like to propose one problem to you. And then you can feel free to pause the video, and before you actually see me going over 2 possible solutions, why don't you try to solve it yourself, and then to see if you can get something very similar to what I'm going to show to you. Okay, let me show you what the problem is by illustrating how the final ultimate product should really behave. Let's say for this week, we're mainly just going to develop some console application, just build something quickly. And then next week, we'll focus more on the algorithms, building methods for around two-dimensional arrays. So that will be the plan. For this week, mainly just console app. Let me now present a problem to you. Let's say we are trying to solve the following problem with this information table here. I call this the distances table. So we got basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We got 7 rows in the table. Each row represents from some departure city, for example, departing from Chicago, and we want to fly to Boston. And the distance would just be 983 kilometers. And similarly, if I want to fly from Miami to I want to fly from Miami. So if you go this row here to New York, it's going to take 1,549 kilometers, right? So that's the distance table I'm talking about. You can see the list of cities: Chicago, Boston, New York, Atlanta, Miami, Dallas, Houston, is exactly the same as the list for the columns over here. So we got a 7x7 matrix over here, right? So don't worry about a two-dimensional array just yet. We will get there eventually for this week, but for now, let's understand what the problem is we want to solve, and then try to see, without knowing two-dimensional array, would you be able to solve it? I'm sure you can, but you may want to try it out yourself before I go over the first version of the solution together with you. So that'll be the best for your learning. It wouldn't take long for you to come up with the solution. All right, so that's a distance table. Hopefully you have no problem here. Let me just show you one example over here. Let's say I got a following program to develop, like an app. I want to say every time the program is going to prompt me for the itinerary, asking me how many cities you want to travel in your itinerary. Let's say I want to travel around 4 cities. Let's say I want to start with Boston, go to Chicago, and then I want to go to Miami, and then I want to go to Houston. Well, just for this particular example, we simply use a U.S. cities. Of course, you can definitely change the table accordingly to maybe international cities if you like. Okay, just for illustration. Let's say my itinerary is going to involve, again, Boston, Chicago, Miami, and also Houston. And then if I book my tickets from the airline, so I can definitely accumulate my mileage. And part of the routine for the airline reservation system should be to calculate how much distance I should really travel throughout my itinerary, so they can calculate my mileage accordingly. So that's kind of the simplified version of the app we would like to implement this week. Okay, let me show you exactly how it should look like. Let's just take that example for the itinerary involving 4 cities. Let me just execute the console apps, which I'm going to build together with you in the next video. Let me say run. Okay, so your app should really first prompt user how many cities in your itinerary. Okay, let's say I want to get 4 cities as I just mentioned to you. And then your program is now going to prompt the 4 cities one by one. Okay, enter the first city. Let's say Boston. But of course, you want to make sure you spell exactly as presented in the table, right? It's case sensitive. And also, for example, there is a space over here between New and York. The first one, Boston, and then the second one should be Chicago. And then the third city should be, let's say, Miami. And the fourth, the final city should be Houston, right? Right, and then eventually your program is going to do the computation, and then it's going to do a breakdown about the itinerary. So how do you to travel from Boston to Chicago? You see, from Boston to Chicago, it should really correspond to this particular cell. That should be 983 over here. And then the second one should be from Chicago to Miami. Right, you can see from Chicago to Chicago over here to Miami. So that should be 1,375 and etc. Right? And the total distance should be the summation of all the distances from the pairwise cities in your itinerary. All right, so that's basically the problem we are trying to solve. Hopefully that's clear to you. And also we want to do some error checking as well. So when you actually try to enter the cities in your itinerary, if you enter anything that's invalid, so that means you will not be anything that's undefined by the table over here, you should not be able to calculate the distance, right? For sure. Let me just illustrate to you. Let's say I want to do another one. Let's say I want to do, let's say, 4 cities over here. Let's say the first one is valid. I'll simply say Boston, right? You can see Boston is definitely a valid row. By the way, the row over here are the row denotes the departure cities, and also the column over here denotes the destination city. So that's why I say if I want to go from Boston to Chicago, I should really look at this corresponding cell. Just make sure you know how to look up the table. Okay, let's say Boston, and then I want to go from Boston, for example, to, let's say, Toronto. And then I want to go from Toronto to maybe London, UK, and then I want to fly from London to maybe Seoul, South Korea, for example. All right, so now you can see that my app should be smart enough to really figure out of the four cities I just typed into the program, 3 of them are simply undefined as far as the table is concerned over here. You can see Toronto, London, and Seoul, they are simply undefined, right? So your app will simply just say goodbye, right? I cannot do anything for you. All right, so that's about the both the normal calculation when all the cities are defined. You can calculate, and by the way, you can see here the number is really up to the user. So you can calculate itinerary to be as long as possible, right? For now, I just give you 4 cities. And also, you want to make sure you can also handle any cities that's actually not defined by the table. As long as there is one city that's undefined, you have to make sure you type the you want to print out the error. So it's more like an existential property check, right? To make sure if there's at least one city that's undefined, you're going to print out the error eventually, rather than calculating the distances. Okay, so that's about what we want to solve this week. And then I'm going to give you 2 versions. The first version, of course, without assuming that you actually know about 2-dimensional arrays, we're just going to do by 1-dimensional arrays. And then we'll see what the drawback, what the disadvantages it might be, there might be. And then we'll do the second version using 2-dimensional arrays. I thought that might be a gentle introduction to 2-dimensional arrays. And the next week, we'll try to do some utility methods to strengthen your understanding about 2-dimensional arrays. So that'll be the plan for your learning. All right, let's now that we understand the problem, okay, I will still refer back to this table very often. So you can also you can take a screenshot, or you can simply copy that down. We're gonna need that. Okay, so let me just clear the console over here, and then let me double click on my console. Right. So let's now create for this week. So it's now going to be week number 10. Remember, we did week number 9, actually Android Studio. So that's why you don't see week number 9 over here, right? Just in case you're confused. Right click on the package Explorer and say new, and then Java projects. And let's say week underscore 10 over here. And say finish. And don't forget, you don't want to create a module-info.java. Don't forget, right? All right, so now we got our week number 10. Let me say I only need 2 packages for now. If I turn out I also need a JUnit tests, I will define that. But for now, let's say we only need new and then console apps. Okay, I believe this might be the only package I need for this week, right? And then next week, we're going to define also the model by declaring some utility methods and also some JUnit tests as well. But for this week, just console apps. Okay. And one thing to notice, we are not really trying to extend our discussion about object orientation. It's already done from week number 6 to week number 8. Those 3 weeks cover everything I want to say about object-oriented programming. And this week, we just want to strengthen about the procedural part for Java, which will also be beneficial for your study in the second year for the computer science degree. Okay, so that's about what we need, and then also that's a setup. Again, you may just want to pause the video or just stop the video, and then before you move on to the second one, think about how you might solve the problem I just presented to you about calculating the distances for the itinerary according to this distances table over here before you see my solution. All right, in the next video, we'll see the first version of the solution using 1-dimensional arrays only.